guys.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the later edition of our live tonight.
Sort of ironic. We're having a winter survival talk, or at least it's in this session, and today was like 65 degrees.
Yeah, so I couldn't get into it. I'm like, I wasn't freezing to death today. So, but I mean, it was really nice. But we'll get into that as more people join in. So I see that Haas from Off Kilter Holsters here. He says, I'm here trying to figure out how to watch the Big Ten app tomorrow. My cousin is ranked 28th in the nation, senior at West Point. Tomorrow he wrestles the number 1, pulling for the upset. That's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
I am a firm believer in upsets and underdogs, so we'll be rooting for him. I know how tough that can be. My dad was a wrestling coach, and whenever we'd usually have to get like dragged along to practices with him. And we were young, like 13 or 14, and my dad would be like, all right, I'm going to show you guys how to do this movie. Like, Ashley, come out here. So I was used to getting like flipped around and like put in weird holds, but at the same time, I feel like it might have toughened me up a little bit. So.
Hello, Stephanie
Hello,
McKee.
Stephanie.
Betty
How are
Randall,
you?
Ashley B.
Hello, Ashley. Hello, Betty. So how's everybody doing tonight? I hope that you guys are staying warm tonight. Like we said, it was a high of like 64 here today. This was too hot during the day. I got a little uncomfortable in a hoodie, and I haven't been able to stay up for about a week. We've had like highs in the 20s last week. So
it was meant to help my sister, though. For those of you who know, Ashley B's my sister, and they were out west in Arizona, visit some national parks out there.
And the American Dairy Goat Association convention was out in Arizona this week as well.
And she showed some pictures that my wife was drooling over for high-end auction goats. What the highest spot?
So the highest one was from Misbehaving Farms, and this was a doeling that was out of like the first in her class in 2020. I don't know if she's like a first freshener or a yearling freshener, but she went for $26,000. That's for a young, unproven animal, stacked pedigree, just really, really nice lines. Actually came from like a lot of local lines like around here, but it was just kind of crazy to see an animal go for that much here. I like cry when I feel like I'm spending a little bit too much, and I see animals like that, and I'm like, I'm not spending anything. So.
But one thing interesting to see was, or that she mentioned, was Nigerian dwarfs were pretty prominent now on the scene, which a couple years ago that wasn't the case. So they're definitely growing in popularity. So hello, Fairview Family Farm. Good to have you tonight.
Hello, Emma. Yeah, so like we were looking at like the spotlight of animals, and for this specific association, like the top breeders will nominate like animals to come down, and I'm guessing there's probably like a commission that the association gets a little bit for it, but also the breeder probably gets a small cut of the animals' proceeds through the auction. But it seems like Nigerians have just been like at the top money wise. We were actually looking because I told Mark, I'm pretty sure Haley, one of our newest additions that came from Missouri, that her sire was a spotlight buck, and sure enough, in 2017 he was the spotlight buck. He was the one that sold for the most that year. So it was kind of crazy because like you don't really make that association a lot until you start really getting into like all the genetics and trying to better the breed. But anyways, we don't need to go into talking about goats. We're here to talk about winter preparedness.
Emma asks, are you prepared for winter now?
No, I'm never prepared for winter.
Are we ready mentally for it? Probably not.
No, I'm not even really mentally ready right now for the time change. So like when he told me like we're gonna go live an hour late, I was like, like I will be so tired.
I told her she could go on her own, but
I didn't want to do that because you give the comedic relief. I'll just sit here and talk about goats all night long, and nobody wants that. So
I will admit that I was worried going into their virtual event if it would be like a sales pitch, because they're of course a retail store that sells.
Well, they're a co-op, so they're owned a lot by their customers and their members. So they're a little bit different in that way.
But honestly, there was a lot of good information that came out of it, especially about clothing materials, which I didn't really think much about. Like, what was it? Down. They actually were pretty.
If you know you're going to be getting wet or you're going to be sweating a lot, down is only 2% effective when it's wet. So they're like, if you know you're going to be in a situation where you're going to get soaking wet or you're going to be doing a lot of sweating, like don't wear down because it won't be very effective. Whereas merino wool would be highly effective and is antimicrobial. So they're saying like you could wear that like days at a time and it would be totally fine. So,
that was interesting. Like I never really thought I would. They covered some of the basics such as layering, which I've always heard, and we practice a lot, especially when we go out hunting. Because when we go out hunting,
It's layered
even though we'll
upon
hike out there,
layer.
it's awful because like you'll go out to
Yeah.
the stand, you'll sweat walking out there because you're hiking through the woods. It's a decent walk. I mean,
it
it's
is a
probably
decent walk. And if
20
you're,
minutes.
especially like in when I'm with them, in that situation, like we're racing against daylight because he likes to sleep and Joe likes to sleep in the morning. So we're like running out to the stand because I'm like, no, we have to be out there at a specific time, and that can make for some pretty sweaty instances, which is also not good because then you're reeking of your own body odor, which to your feet.
Yeah.
So it's
and
like
moisture,
it's a double-edged sword.
Staying dry, it means staying warm.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So they did say the down was one of the better ones to wear if you're not going to be getting wet, which kind of makes sense because like when you think about down is the feather, like the base core of feathers, like for like poultry, waterfowl and things like that. And that type of feathering never comes in contact with moisture because they have that thick layer of feathers over the top, and then they have an oil gland that makes them water resistant. And if you've ever seen like ducks that I think it's called wet feather is what it's called, when they kind of have lost that buoyancy and that there's something going on with their preening, they look wet all the time, and it gets down into their down. And I know in the Muscovy duck forums that I'm a part of, they're like, hey, if it gets down and down and it's cold, like your bird's going to die because it's going to get too cold. So that made a lot of sense to me when I was listening, like half listening, because I was like doing this on the couch, like listening while trying to just kind of rest a little bit. But it made a lot of sense when they were talking about the down and the layering. There was just a lot of really, really helpful things. And even people like on homesteads, we know that in colder weather, it's important to layer up, and that sweating can be an issue. Because like when they started talking about down and like the sweat and having to have something that wicks the sweat off of you, it makes total sense because like we all get out there in the sun, especially with livestock. Like winter is not a walk in the park if you have livestock of any sort. And I know I'll get out there and I'll start mucking stalls or carrying water buckets, and I'll get a really heavy sweat, and I will feel super hot and I will want to peel off those layers. But the moment that I sit still, because eventually we're all going to go into a restful period, and that can come back to bite you. So you have to be really careful about layering, but also knowing when the appropriate time it is to remove layers and when to put them back on. So what was something they said? Fleece was another good one if you knew you were going to be getting wet or sweating, because even like when it's wet, it's still pretty effective.
Yeah.
It was down was like the big one. And they said cotton is rotten.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And cotton really isn't like the most warm thing you could wear in cold weather.
Just cheap.
Yeah. So Haas says, I prepare for winter by buying a new hoodie, and that's it. That's all I have to do. Yeah, down there in Florida. Which it was funny you mentioned that though, because they were talking about hypothermia, because that's like the number one thing people think about when they think about being prepared for winter or surviving cold temperatures. And like there have been instances where people have actually died of hypothermia in as high as 70 degrees. And I don't know if that has to do with maybe their region. Like they're used to being in a very, very warm region. So 70 is actually really cold. Like people in California at like 60 or 70 degrees will put on jackets. I know Emma actually in Old Reading Farms live from 7 to 8 o'clock tonight was talking about that. Like she thought it was funny. She goes see her parents in SoCal and it's 60 degrees and they've all got all their heavy winter clothing on. But I mean, for them, that feels cold. And then there's also things that you have to take into consideration. Like if they're taking maybe blood thinning type medications that they have to, their age, their fitness, all kinds of things like that. So it was really good. What were some of the things that stood out to you?
Not quite bad. I was going to say hi to Bruce. I saw him.
Hello,
in there.
Bruce. Hey.
Fairview Family Farms. I'm glad it's going to be in the 40s here this week.
Yeah.
I have a lot to get done still.
Yes.
Yeah. It seems like around here, it waits till the weekends to have the worst weather.
Yeah, when we have time to do things.
Yeah.
Or when it's like we get some of that daylight back. Because actually, Flu smells terrible, my breeding buck, because he's urinated on himself a lot for breeding season. So he smells awful. But he's also dealing with like a pretty bad case of urine scald. So I really need to, tomorrow, I have a doe that's visiting us that he's actually being stalled with and breeding. But when she leaves tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of like the 57 degrees. And I'm going to actually bathe his face in the back part of his legs, because I know I won't freeze him too much. And I can actually clip some of that hair that's holding the urine against his skin and creating urine scald. So It's crazy.
Emma said, I'm hoping to get some Carhartt gear this year for Christmas.
Ooh, that's not Carhartt is so nice, and it feels pretty lightweight for how warm it is too.
Yeah,
you know, like it
Bruce,
doesn't.
I've always been down with down.
Well, that's what they said. They're like down with down. Don't do it.
Hello, Evelyn. Good to have you in here tonight. Haas said, I've been in the early stages of hypothermia. Not enough room here, but ask on a live, and I will tell you about the time I almost died from cold and
embarrassment. That's awful. Yeah. That was actually an embarrassment. That brings up another point, because they were saying, like, if you're out in the elements, like they're talking about some of like the safety things that you could do, and one is like make sure that you have layers, that you have a light with you, and that you have something where you could make a fire, and that you have someone trusted, that you give them an itinerary. Like, this is where I should be at this time. If you haven't heard from me by X amount of time, you need to send someone to come look for me. And actually, Mark does that for me when I go hunting by myself. And it is just like to find my phone, where he can tell if I'm still out in the woods. And I'll usually tell him, he knows like around 10:30 is probably like the latest I will stay out there, because then I start feeling guilty that I need to be at the farm doing something. And he knows, like, by 10:30, if he doesn't see movement from my phone moving through the forest, then something's wrong. And he can easily call my mom or my dad, because I hunt on their property, and send them to go look for me. And there actually has been one instance where my mom, I was coming back from bow hunting, and she was on the path coming back. She's like, you were out here for way too long, and it was way too cold, and I was worried. And it was to that point, like, where I couldn't function hand wise. My hands were getting way too cold. But he said that the embarrassment, you can't have pride in cold weather, because you have to be able to communicate with someone and say, hey, I'm tired, or hey, I am cold. Don't try to tough it out. That you have to be super cognizant of like how your body is handling the cold, and that you should be buddied up. So like, if we were walking or hiking and doing something in very cold weather, it would be my responsibility to be like, Mark, are you okay? How do you feel? Do we need to stop? Like, to keep tabs on one another. Emma says, we're getting down to 32 tonight and 26 tomorrow night. Oh,
yep.
That's coming our way. Tomorrow's our last day of warm, I think.
Yeah, it's going to drop.
I think we get highs in the 40s later on this week a little bit, but then after that, it doesn't look like we get very warm. Which, it's that time of year. I mean, we can only run from it so long before it catches us.
Yeah. Haas said, goods pee on themselves in hopes of mating. Odd, I know a guy from school who must have thought he was a kid.
Oh my God.
We call it their own cologne.
Yeah, they make their own cologne.
Yeah, I don't know if that guy probably had the same success rate as our bucks.
It was hilarious though, because like the people that brought the doe to be bred on Sunday, I actually sold 2 does to them already bred, and they were bringing their existing doe, and they'd never been around a rutting buck at all. And like, the husband was not, you could tell he kind of like wasn't 100% in with like the homesteading or like livestock. So it was just kind of funny, because he's like, is that normal? It's like, oh my God, he smells bad. Like, yeah, he smells really bad. And I'm like, this is completely normal. He's going to get in there. He's going to make a fool of himself. He's going to start peeing all over the place. He's going to start blubbering. He's going to chase her. And he's like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what they do.
Emma said, be sure to hit that thumbs up. Thank you,
yes,
Emma.
Emma, thank you.
And she also said, a thermal blanket is handy to have. I need to get one for my car for the winter.
Yeah. Actually, we have them in our go bags.
So I built Ashley a go bag. That I also have one as well.
Mylar blanket in there, don't we?
Yep.
There's a Mylar blanket in
Vivi in there. She's like talked about possibly doing a video on it.
I would really like to.
People would enjoy watching me go through a backpack.
I think you should though, because there's a lot of reasoning behind that, and everybody's gonna say like, oh, it's a go bag. Just say it's a bug out. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a bug out bag, but it's also like one of those things, like if I'm out and I'm driving and we get hit by a blizzard and my car gets pushed off the road where nobody can see me, there should be enough things in this bag to sustain me for at least a day or so.
And honestly, what I kept in mind too is keeping a lot of things that were practical use for daily. Just a general first aid kit that has pain relievers in it, Band-Aids, stuff like that, sting relief. I just added a nested silverware pack in there, just in case.
Mostly because McDonald's forgets to give us forks
so
for
little
the
things
hot
like
cakes.
that. It can be useful in like many cases. I have ponchos in there in case it rains. I like it. One thing I did put together a lot of the or group together a lot of the stuff included in the bag into little pouches. So that way when we go to, like, we were down in Tennessee, we went to Dollywood, I was able to just quickly pull out the pouches I know that I didn't want to take into the park or weren't allowed in the park. Like, I have some tools in there. So that would look sketchy.
Yeah.
But I take those out, just throw them aside, and actually I have a backpack. Then I can just quickly throw on and carry through the park.
It's been helpful in a lot of situations, honestly. Like especially the poncho. There's just been a lot of times where, like, especially when he started making the go bags, that I would kind of like poke fun, or his EDC. So his EDC is if for anybody that's not aware with like those acronyms, means an everyday carry. And those can be different for everybody, but like he had keychains with like all kinds of little tools that were really helpful that I used to make fun of him for, until like they came in handy, and I'm like, I will no longer laugh at you over this, because they've proven to be worth their weight in gold, because those are situations where you don't expect that you will need something, but those situations always arise where you wish you had a specific tool, or you wish you had certain supplies on hand, because it would make whatever you're doing that much easier and bearable.
Yeah, there's many like everyday tools or things that you could use that ultimately could help you in a stressful situation too. So I try to make it practical in many ways. So
Evelyn says, I have Raynaud, so I keep a supply of every size of shake hand warmers. Yes, those are a godsend.
Yeah,
those are a godsend. And back when we first started hunting, they didn't make like the toe warmers, but they actually have like the sticky adhesive toe warmers now that you can like peel and put like on the like directly on your skin.
Sock,
So like those would be really good to probably keep on hand in cold weather. And
that's what Joe needed.
Yeah, Joe did need it. I told her, even though she said it was my fault.
I don't say too loud. She'll come out here.
I don't care. She can come out here and argue with me all she wants. It was not my fault.
Emma said, yeah, I need to update my first aid kit. Just went through CPR training yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Debating investing in an AED. Oh, wow. That's a big jump. But
hi, Brenda.
I think those ultimately have a good place too to save lives.
100%. And like we carry, both of us, in things that we carry pretty much wherever we go, is
like a tourniquet?
A tourniquet, yeah. We took the blood stopping class and everything, so we learned a lot about that. But that was one of those things, And that's something too that they were mentioning. If you take classes like that, it's good every now and then to take them again. So like I took a women's self-defense class like 2 or 3 years ago. I'd really love to go do it again and take Joe with me. The same guy did like the blood stop class. So I would encourage a lot of people to expand your knowledge in that way. Not that I think like the end of the world or total breakdown is coming, but there's no harm in having knowledge that is useful in many situations, especially because nowadays a lot of people, we feel really comfortable in our everyday. And comfort can be your enemy sometimes, especially when it comes to preparedness. We've learned to become comfortable with things we shouldn't be comfortable with.
Well, you never know what situation you could run into, like on a daily basis too, like a car accident. You could run into a pretty severe situation being that.
No, exactly. But that's the thing. You get into this mindset of comfort where you don't think that can happen to you. And you're not exempt. None of us are exempt. The moment that we step outside of our houses, even inside of our houses, we're not exempt from things happening that are out of the normal, things that are traumatic, or things that if we were prepared, it would make it a lot easier for us to come out on top of those situations. And I think that's probably a good thing for most people to invest in, like knowledge-wise.
Yeah. Hello, Brenda Baker. I said, put some super glue in there if you're tough enough to give yourself stitches.
Yeah.
Just in case. Also, a couple small plastic bottles of whiskey, sanitation, instant heater, and numbing agent. Yeah. There's like a lot of different things that have multiple uses if you look at it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like Ashley said, one of the things we carry is tourniquets and basic first aid for sure. But it's also good to know how to use it. But I do like to carry it because I carry something being vague that causes holes. So I'd like something to plug holes if I need to.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought it was funny, like when we took the blood stopping class, and we were just recently talking about this. I can't remember who it was. It might have been my parents. But we were talking about like putting on a tourniquet. And we in our class, they made sure to tell us like, hey, if like the person is conscious, you cannot just whip out a tourniquet and run up to that person and apply a tourniquet. You have got to get verbal consent that you can do that. I guess because of like how our legislation is here and how we can get in trouble for that. And there's a lot of 100. You do.
CPR
you have to be super. You have to be super. And they're like, well, now if they're like unconscious and they can't give you consent, they're like, by all means, go ahead, apply the tourniquet, put on the time that you applied it. And there was a certain stigma back in the day that if you put on a tourniquet, you were going to lose that limb. And that's just, it's simply not true.
It's a big difference now. Even my mom mentioned that because she did nursing classes before I was born, but she mentioned that was a big stigma with the tourniquets. Was if you applied it, you were going to lose the limb. And now they're finding out that's definitely not the case. And the military has even had instances where there was a guy that went 32 hours with a tourniquet because they couldn't expedite.
Well, that's how they were losing our soldiers actually when they first started going to Iraq, because and even before then, like with IEDs or roadside bombings, was like people would not put on tourniquets because they were afraid like they were going to cause that soldier to lose a limb, and that's how a lot of them died, was by bleeding out. So that's something
where they thought it would take a couple hours to cause that.
Yeah, 100%.
I said, dude, I could do chest compressions like a boss. Just saying, there you go.
I take your word for it. It always makes me think of like The Office when they're trying to teach them to juke.
Dude,
and he's like,
staying alive.
And like Michael's like, first I was afraid, I was petrified. She's like, no.
That's a good scene.
So Dee's Homestead, hello, how are you? Says hello everyone. I can't stay long, but I wanted to stop in and say hi for a few minutes. Glad you're here tonight. Yes, thank you for coming and spending a little bit of time with us.
Brenda Baker said, believe it or not, we keep Carmax too because we've used it for heat rashes, small scrapes, light burns, and it works great. Yeah. Stuff like that's just, and like Carmax you could use on a daily basis, of course, for chapped lips and things like that. But then when you find out it can be used for more significant uses or in a pinch for other areas, those are the things I like to keep in that bag, just so it's not something like, okay, worst case scenario, we'll pull it out. There are a couple things like that, but I try to keep a lot of things in there that benefit in a daily basis. I know Ashley had to. What were you looking? You were looking for ibuprofen that one day at work, and you went out to your bag.
I brought my whole bag in. And he was like, "What is this?" Like I was going through some of it. And he's like, "So is this in case like the end of the?" I'm like, "No, this could be just in case like I have a car wreck and nobody can find me for a little bit, or if something bad were to happen where I would have to like grab something and get out of there. This has enough in there for like a day if I needed to." And I'm like, I hope I never have to utilize my go bag in certain situations, but it's sure nice to have it there. Especially because like there's a water jug in there, you can keep water in there. Mark had some I remember when we went down to Mammoth Cave a couple years ago, he actually had granola bags and took his go bag with us while we were hiking, and we were all starving. He started to get into his bag and was taking out some things, and our little niece was like, "What do you got there?" No.
Let's see, to protect our privacy.
I will protect our privacy later. The pop-ups. Yeah. Oh no, it's asking for us to protect our privacy through a VPN.
Yeah.
Hold on, not right now, computer.
Spam.
You know the best way to survive in cold.
I'm afraid where that.
I'm afraid where you're going with that. Be careful. Our mods have really good band hammers in here. Staying alive, stay the bait lady actually use that song. It makes sense though, because like that compression goes right along with that.
Consent is necessary.
It is.
It is.
It is.
And
just
can
kind
open
of
yourself to some
100%. That's exactly how they kind of said. They're like, even like EMTs are like, "Hey, I'm going to do this. Is this okay? Unless it's like life threatening, or they're belligerent and they don't know."
She also said they suggested not using ointments that are petroleum based for cases like burns. That stuff is a no-no for that.
Yeah, is it because it traps in the heat? Is that why?
Yeah, because there's certain things you don't.
It doesn't let the heat out.
Actually, more harmful than helpful in some cases on some of that stuff. Yeah. One thing I was thinking about the other day though is like how many people used to carry like the how to get out of your car or how to get out of a rut or something if your car was stuck. You all right?
Yeah, I'm making sure.
Oh. And like they would carry, what was it, cat litter, stuff like that.
Like a board.
I don't know many people that do that anymore. I think some of it, I know me and Ashley talked about the other day, is like the practicality of everybody just are assuming everybody has cell phones. So everybody's like, if I get stuck,
I'll all call. Areas. Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but like we've seen people stranded on the road and it's like, they probably got some. They're probably good,
Yeah.
But
we really should not assume that. And actually, the person that was talking on this was like, "Hey, if you get stranded in the cold, they're like, and you can use your phone, by all means use it, but they're like, you save a lot of energy if you text rather than call. Like, so that if you need to prolong the battery life, which most of you in here already probably know that, but especially like in the cold, that will prolong your battery life, and you can keep that useful tool on you and useful."
Fairview Family Farm said, "My go-to is green goo for scrapes, rashes, etc."
Oh, neat.
I don't know if I've seen that product. I'll have to check that out.
D says, "I keep a tourniquet and combat dressing in my vehicle in case I run into something bad." And yeah, 100%.
And one thing I've also learned while listening to different experts on the topic is keeping it ready. Like tourniquets actually take some assembly to get put together. I carry a CAT one, and you have to like loop it through a buckle and everything like that. So they're like, in case you have to apply to yourself, keep it in like a ready state.
Yeah, so where you can like slide it up,
slide it on, and you're not trying to run it through.
Well, because if you like say I'm hurt here, you're like you've already lost the use of one of their limbs. Like so you need to make it to where you can manipulate it with one hand, which makes total sense.
Yep.
And then you've got Off Kilter says, I refuse to get recertified in CPR because oh my God. Haas. I don't know if that's a really good excuse, brother.
Emma said we use the AED for CPR as a metronome to help keep you keep pace. That's good.
Especially in like a high stress situation like that, where like that could probably get away from you. Yeah, 100%. And I thought it was funny though, because like when we were doing the tourniquet training, I was like, now if they're bleeding here, you don't apply a tourniquet to their neck. Yeah. But like they had these silicone, like which would be like the equivalent like of a thigh.
It was weird though. It was like a hot dog.
It was like a hot dog, and it was really gross to like manipulate. But, like, and we had some of that the combat dressing, like you were talking about, these
Vienna sausage. That's what it looked like.
It did look like a huge Vienna sausage. It was kind of gross.
It was like a section of leg.
It was kind of gross. But like the one thing we learned about that too is like people will just like stuff it in there just to stuff it in there. Like if you can stuff up and towards the heart because that's where the blood's coming, like up and towards the heart is where you should be compacting all that dressing. Which I thought that was really neat. But then they were debunking like the tampons, like to put a tampon in a wound like that would stop it. They're like actually like it's not going to stop it.
Yeah.
That's a common misconception, along with other feminine napkins and things that are used for things. Like I bet, like if you needed to, and that's all you had, you might be able to make it work. But like that's
don't carry that as a.
It's misconstrued. Yeah, that's not what it's used for. Brenda says, "Shut up." Brenda says, "Have you heard of using mustard on burns? My husband is a retired firefighter, and he said they used it a lot to help burn victims from car wrecks or house fires, if not really severe." No, but I've heard of egg whites.
Yeah, I've heard of the egg
and
white
vinegar.
Things. Yeah.
Which consequently, like vinegar does a lot, like for bee stings. I know vinegar is another big one. Yeah. I have not heard that. Now, is it mustard like the green or the yellow mustard you put on a sandwich, or is it like mustard, like seed or ground mustard or something like that?
Like a more of a raw.
Yeah. Dee says, I hadn't heard of that before, but would be something to research. I've heard, like the vinegar.
Yeah.
So Dee's is kind of revamping up on what we were saying with like the vinegar.
Evelyn said she has used it before and it works amazingly well. Huh. That's just another neat thing. Like, what are the different stuff around the home that you can use in different areas?
Oh, like yeah, 100%. And a lot of people don't even have knowledge of that. Like the things that you can use, like blood stopping, sugar and flour can be used to blood stop. Probably not the best thing you want to. I keep a blood stop powder or like Wonder Dust for the goats, but now that is like a cauterizing agent. So for things like that, the blood stop powder, you need to be braced for that to sting like a mother. You know what I mean? Like it's going to hurt a lot, because when I was talking to the blood stop guy, he's like, you can use that. He's like, but that is going to be excruciatingly painful, especially like.
Well, tourniquets in general aren't.
Yeah, well, that's what they said too. It's like if you've gotten consent, like you need to make sure the person knows, like, this is really going to hurt. Do not fight me and leave it alone. Don't touch it. So.
Emma said it'd be helpful to know if they've taken aspirin or another blood thinner.
Yes, 100%.
Increase blood flow.
100%.
I said, fun fact. Here we go. If jugular gets nipped, put a knee on their neck, only releasing for a quick deep breath until EMT gets there. At least that's what they did in NHL twice.
Oh God!
The National Hiker League.
Helpful tip there, huh?
Yeah.
So it's regular mustard. Okay, mustard draws the heat out and helps to stop from blistering. Excuse me. Do you have any great poop on? Bruce, you are ate up.
They need to bring that back.
Yeah, cayenne will stop blood too.
Oh,
cayenne also helps for like. I know cayenne helps a lot for goats that have a problem regulating their heat, to pull their heat up quickly. Like I'll give cayenne pepper, molasses, and coffee, like a mixture of that or corn syrup to kind of just pull everything up, get the energy up, get their blood pumping.
Emma said they're going to drop the F-bomb there.
I almost did. I almost did. Because it's going to hurt, like it is really going to hurt.
One thing I didn't think about too was they were talking about, going back to more winter survival, was your extremities that get cold. Actually keeping your core warm will help your extremities, because what happens is, like frostbite in situations where your extremities are getting too cold, that is actually blood being pulled back to keep your vital organs warm. Mm-hmm. So they said actually instead of trying to warm up your extremities directly, keeping your core warm actually.
That's why they'll say like to rub a lot to create that friction to pull up heat.
You know, like I was thinking, oh, hey, your fingers are frost, but immediately try to concentrate on warming them up.
You can live without a finger or two. You can't live if your heart stops.
Yep. But the neat thing they also said was the rule of threes. So it was 3 minutes of oxygen, which of course, you know, more likely if you're drowning or in an avalanche. 3 hours without shelter, which means you're exposed to the elements.
Yeah.
3 days without water.
Or 3 days without water, and usually 3 days for some 3 weeks for what?
Food.
I thought that was like that usually takes 3 days for people to like find you.
That was also
they said 3 days, or like it's usually 3 days after you've gone missing that they'll probably pinpoint.
So they recommended like if you had food storage, like in your car, especially in the winter, you slid off the road, because that's the thing too. In the winter, I mean, the risk of sliding off the road due to ice and then going down an embankment or somewhere where somebody can find you.
Snow covered where nobody can see you. You know,
that's a real risk. So
hello, the Reef Robber. How are you?
Said, hey.
Bruce,
only the OG snow above grade coupon.
We do.
I thought that commercial
but there was a lot of things to glean from that, and I know like that's not what we typically talk about here, but like we were talking about last week, there's been kind of like a shift in our mindset, and it's pretty much like gathering as much knowledge as we can because we're comfortable. A lot of us are comfortable in our daily lives, and it doesn't take much for all that comfort to go right out the window, for it to all go away and to kind of just be left with like, what do I do? You know? And I feel like even in situations like that, even if 70s is like the lowest that the temperature in your area ever gets, like they said, there's been cases where people have perished from hypothermia in 70-degree weather. There can be a lot of different factors. When we heard that, we were like, what? There's no way. But I mean, if you're not used to it,
Haas, be careful out there.
You could still get hypothermia. But then Mark's like, well, you could kind of use this to feed into like, how do you prepare for winter around the farm? And I'm like, I don't even want to think about that because I'm so far behind on actually being prepared for winter. Like it's going to be here on top of us before I'm ready.
Dee said they keep an MRE in your vehicle, lots of calories, and a heater.
100%. It's easier to stay warmer than to get warm. To put your calories to good
once
use.
You start getting cold, warm. Better hurry up and try to keep that warm because it's only going to get worse.
And that's exactly why they were bringing that up though, Dees, is because they were talking about your calorie intake and having limited resources to build. They're like, so if you're low on calorie intake, like it's easier to stay warm than to get warm. So use your calories wisely.
It was a really good seminar. Like I was surprised. Like I thought, like I said, they were going to push a lot of their products, which they had products actually as examples of the materials and the type of clothing that you'd wear over just like, hey, try to buy this, but like put this on your wish list because we sell it. It was really actually a good, well put together, and it was still going actually when we logged off. So they had an open forum for questions. So I'll be honest, like REI, I've looked at them in the past and I was like, they're probably a little too high end for me.
They feel hoity-toity to us, but that's not really the case.
We visited a store and we became members actually of the co-op, and they actually have some cool products. We actually got
lots of really cool products, lots of very useful, functional products that we were like, oh, okay, this isn't all just like.
They have a lot of farm gear, but
but like.
Hiking
it's
and camping.
Not all homesteading
camping
is about
something
farming.
we'd like to get more into too, because honestly, we haven't gone in a while. So
we haven't gone in a really long time. But usually it's because the farm does not allow us to like just pick up and go. I wish it did.
Camp out with the goats. Imagine that.
Can you think of like the unimaginable chaos that would happen if we slept in with the goats?
I think that's a business idea. So we could do camp with the goats, have people over, and let them get absolutely no sleep through the night because the goats would constantly be in their tent, outside their tent, chewing on the tent poles.
Goats do go to sleep pretty well.
I think we could sell it for at least a little bit until the reviews start coming.
Well, I've been trying to think of endeavors to make more money around their farm, to make it more sustainable, and actually like bringing in, as much as like I've preached against it, like it's a liability nightmare. Bringing people in and letting them have like, even using my animals as therapy animals, because you can ask Mark, like a lot of these, like a lot of the goats will just come right up to you. If you sit down, they're going to get into your lap. They're going to be all over you. And there is an endorphin release when you're around animals, 100%. And I was going to talk to you about that at some point. I don't know how that will go. I would even love to have like a yoga instructor come in and like just use my farm. Like bring your yoga people out here. Just pay me a fee to come and have your class.
Yoga's intense.
Yoga is intense. We tried yoga once.
Make fun of that, and I ain't gonna lie, that
after about 30 minutes of like 4 different warrior poses, you're like, just kill me.
Yeah.
Just let me die.
Man, this stuff. Kudos to people that do it regular, because man, that stuff.
We were doing like P90X a long time ago, and it got to the yoga, and we're like, sweet, this is gonna be like a wind down. And it got in the middle of it, and Mark's in the middle of a crunchy frog, and he's like, just making all kinds of weird noises.
Yeah. I had more instinctual just groans and moans.
Yeah, he's like, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
This is not a natural
Wasn't meant to bend that way. Brenda Baker said, I like your shirt, Marky. Thank you.
Yes, that is our swag. That's
our logo there. Because I was
and I got you a black shirt like a crazy person, knowing that we have dogs that shed insanely.
But that was some I should put together.
So REI, oh boy,
has an outlet store.
They do have an outlet store, and if you remember, you get to do like the garage sale stuff. So when people actually bring in their gear back in, and they resell it, you get access to that. Whereas if you're not a member, you don't really get to access that.
It's got some cool, you know, what do you call that? Benefits.
Yeah, it does have. There are a couple of different benefits.
Yep. Haas said, Pemmican and Hardtack kept the Patriots alive during the winter in Revolution. It's definitely shelf stable. Yeah. Might put some in an emergency kit. Yeah, 100%. Pemmican I looked at. There's actually, it's pretty intense to put it together though. Like it's like animal fat rendered and all that stuff.
Yeah, but back then I think that was like a lot of byproduct that they just had lying around because they did all that.
Something that would last when you went out traveling. You didn't know where you were going. It was a nice
calorie.
And you didn't have an iPhone to sort of call friend. Like,
we were talking about that too today because like we were like, do you remember back in the day, like who actually watches the news anymore? Because I get all my news from the phone, or I'll listen to podcasts all day and listen to different people talk about current events and how they feel about it from their standpoints. But we were talking about like how when we grew up, like it was always just a staple in the morning that the news was on, and in the evening the news was on, and that was like the only time where my mom would like look at us and really mean, you need to shut up. You need to shut up because we need to hear what's going on, because that was like their only tie to knowing like what was going on in the world outside like the newspaper or the radio. So it's just kind of funny, like the comforts that we have now that we really take for granted. Like back then it wasn't like that.
Yeah, Fairview says camping with morning goat yoga.
Yes, 100%.
Or you could do coffee and goats.
Coffee and goats.
I could handle that piece.
Maybe people would get their coffee beans mixed up for like the goat beans though. That would be a terrible, terrible mishap.
Somewhere they're probably using that.
He says, I do an event at my house every fall that family and friends all bring tents and just camp out and have fun. See, that seems really nice. I think that's a great use of your land too, to kind of have them come out and do that.
I like camping too, because like if you do it where, you know, it's just the tents and you take out all the technology, you end up just talking to each other, telling stories, and a lot of things come out of it.
You learn more around a campfire than you do in front of your phone screen about somebody.
Agreed.
100%. So you've got yoga is a good workout. We know it showed how not in shape we were.
Haas said, try the DTPY Diamond House page makes yoga manly. It's tough. I can imagine.
I'm not even trying to make it tough. I was like, man, this is some work.
I think that was on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. About that.
And then D says, Haas hardtack is awesome. I haven't made any in a couple years, but I need to. And then Haas says, Dews, I've never had it. I feel like I'm missing something. D's. He's saying D's. Oh. I've never had it. I just, intellectual knowledge, need to make a personal one. If you do that, if you guys do make that, like make a video of it. Or if you have a video, let us know, because like that's something I would like. I'm kind of interested just to see like what it's like, what goes into it, and like actually trying it first. I was like, this is all I had to survive on, could I be tough and do this?
Yeah, one thing I did end up finding though, and that's all recommended other places, was I think it's made by USD, and it's basically like calorie blocks. It's like a dried food that's in a sealed package and has like a 25-year shelf life. So I threw one in my trunk. I think I still need to get one for your trunk, but they're just blocks of high calorie
powder
food to consume that probably doesn't taste great, but
yeah, but if that's all you've got, I mean,
it can actually get you through a couple of days because like there's I think 6 blocks and each block is 3,000 calories or something crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a pinch it would work. So.
Fairview Family Farm says Coffee and Goats, good name for a group. Yeah, see, there you go. Start one on Facebook. I'll follow it. Certainly will.
A shirt with that.
Yeah, Coffee and Goats. I need to start liking coffee. I found if I put hot chocolate, like just a little bit of the pouch in with coffee, I can drink it. Like here. I did in Tennessee. It wasn't terrible.
She says she loves coffee when she drinks the Starbucks.
The fruit, caramel crunch.
The caramel crunch is amazing.
It is so good. How they just, I don't even need to talk about it. It makes me want to go to Starbucks right now. And I'm not like the coffee type, but like the caramel crunch, like if we drive by it, I'm like, if he asks if he can stop there, we're going to stop.
That's a piece of winter survival.
Yeah. I don't know. Caffeine. I need to wean off of caffeine because then it does this. I haven't had like my normal amount of caffeine, so like I'm really tired right now.
Dragging bed. So
Dee's definitely not the hardtack I'm talking about because Dee's was talking about the hard candy sprinkled in powdered sugar with kale soup because that sounds That sounds so good. I want to make it right now. Emma says the P90X yoga routine is power yoga. I know yoga instructors who've tried it and said it was rough. It was so rough. But I will say, like, after doing it like 3 or 4 times, like you're like, okay, I can feel this. Like it's all about breathing
come up with the
through
names
it.
For some of those, like those poses. They have weird names.
Downward dog, upward facing cobra.
Wasn't there crouching frog or something crazy?
Crunchy frog. You were doing a crunchy frog where you lay on your back and you've got like your knees like up and you're just kind of like rolling around. And I can see why it calls you crunchy frog because you croak and you crack.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, oh, this is terrible. This is not enjoyable.
Emma said my go-to at the Bucks is oat milk, honey, latte.
Sounds really good.
That's right. She did mention that.
You did mention that. And then we had a Starbucks right next to our hotel. And we didn't even try it. No. We are terrible friends.
Well, we got hooked on the caramel crunch.
Yeah, we have it 2 days in a row.
Mm-hmm. Now she's not used to that caffeine.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, Dee's Homestead just subs, so you make it and I will catch it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, DC, there you go. You're getting subs. You got to make it.
There to go for it.
You've got to make it. So what are some of the things you guys do like around your homesteads or anything like that to prepare for winter? Whether you have livestock, whether you garden, do you take it as like a restful period to focus more on the inside of your home, your humble abodes, or are you like outside like I am where I'm like, I've got to keep animals alive?
So we still have things on checklist. For us, winterizing our equipment is one thing I typically do. I usually have it done by now. I tried to do it around Halloween, but haven't yet. But
he's like the rototiller, Friday,
weed eater, all that stuff, putting stable in there to get them ready for spring. That's worked for years for us. And then getting out the water heaters. We're going to
the trough heaters, so that we have had a couple of mornings where it was frosty enough where I had to go break ice. We started doing that
a couple of years ago, and this has been really nice.
And then Mark was super smart because I was like running them in my barn, and we actually had a couple scares like with the heat lamp when my daughter was young. Like she literally could have burned down the entire barn and all the goats in it. It was only by the grace of God that something bad did not happen. Like you cannot tell me that wasn't a miracle that happened. But he's like, how about we move like the water tanks out? He's like, it'll encourage your goats to move around, which is healthy for them during the winter, especially when they're gestating and they're forming little babies in them. That's healthy to keep them moving and active. So I did that. And he's like, and we remove all of the fire hazard that could possibly befall us by having this inside. Even though it's in water, there are times where the goats might go through the entire trough knock it out, chew on the wire, or that the heating element is exposed and can heat up the rubber and actually melt the rubber and cause issues in that way. Yeah, there's a lot of fail safes like with those things. Like if there's a sensor in some of them where if there's not water on it and it can feel that heat element go, it'll just trip everything. But then when we had babies in the winter that actually needed heat lamps and those water heaters would trip the breaker, it was like crap. Yeah. Like now we have all these babies that need we got the heat now source.
Too are supposedly be able to detect the temperature of the water.
Yeah. And they don't kick on unless it's so cold.
Yeah, to a certain temperature. That way you're also saving energy, which is nice. And they weren't that expensive. They're like $35. So we grabbed a couple.
And like starting to bed down animals and clear out runs, which I'm not going to lie, like my barn, the manure that's in there right now is an issue. And it's because number one, I've had very little time, but number two, like with this garden build, I'm trying to save and sequester all of my new manure where I don't have to move it 3 times before it actually gets over there to the garden, but we don't have the garden boxes built. So I'm kind of like waiting for that to move a lot of that manure so that I don't have to buy topsoil, because I have manure and fertilizing making machines out in the field.
Yeah.
It's just they like to make a lot of poop in the runs, and I need to really take care of that. So that means you need to start building boxes. Great. This is my passive aggressive way of telling him he needs to do that.
Haas said, Ashley, go get a shaken espresso with white mocha and the sweet cream shaken in from Starbucks. You will get to drinking coffee quick from it. I've ruined Hannah with coffee. She has a problem.
It's a happy
My
problem.
only pain point with Starbucks is trying to figure out what size, like the naming conventions. Because
Mark gets mad because he'll be like medium, and they will correct him with their lingo. He gets really mad. He's like, just call it a medium. I'm like, this is how they market, though. It's to the
paying you to make it. Please.
And Emma says, I also told you the caffeine doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, see, for me,
I'm hit or miss. So.
And to get ready for winter, Haas hangs lights. I hate you, Haas. That's all you have to do. Oh my goodness. Okay, Brenda's got to run. Bye, Brenda. Thanks so much for stopping and chatting with us. I'm sorry, guys, that we're a little bit later, but we really wanted to attend that.
Yeah.
That thingity thing. And then Emma says, usually we just make sure we're stocked with firewood, but I need to figure out how to keep water from freezing for a week while I'm in SoCal. Yeah. See, that's the sucky thing about winter and animals and taking, or even just, it doesn't even have to be because of winter. Just having animals can be a little bit of
there's a lot of things for water now. A lot of water heaters. And then there's also some people that have done like the tire method where they put a tire with like mulch or what was it? Something in between to sort of insulate the bucket. And
I think it was pool noodles or some type of like foam, like cooler foam. But I've also heard like if you do salt water in like a milk jug or like a pop bottle, maybe in your case, because like of the polarity in the water, it keeps it moving and it improves the freezing temperature. It actually means it has to get colder than usual for it to freeze, and the movement of like the water jug on the top of the water surface helps to keep from ice forming as well. I have not tested that. I would actually like to test that, but I've also got easy water trough heaters that I'm like, just drop it in and walk away from it.
Real world problems for people up north. I'm sure Haas deals with frozen water a lot.
A lot. Haas, it must be so tough down there in the swampy bottoms of Florida.
Emma said yoga postures, asanas are traditionally named in the ancient Greek language of Sanskrit.
Oh, okay.
Many yoga poses are named after heroes, saints, and sages of India and Hindu myths. So
I need to know the myth for downward facing dog.
Or Crunchy Frog. That sounds like an awesome hero. I would see a Marvel movie with that.
The Amazing Adventure of Crunchy Frog.
The whole movie, he's trying to get across the street like Frogger.
We'll see you later, Haas.
Yeah, this boy's tired now. 5,000.
So Stephanie says we used heated water buckets for our goats and poultry. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are a really good.
Yeah, we need to get something for our poultry. It'd be nice to run a line out for that. Because
I just can hear the cat meowing so clearly outside. It's ridiculous. I usually
different things.
What I do is usually because the bucks don't take in as much water during the winter, which is totally normal. People
keep a water heater in them.
That's one of my pet peeves with goats, where people are like, how do I make my goat drink more water in the winter? They're like, I put Gator. I'm like, now it's okay to put electrolytes in there, but like they're drinking what they need. Like their body is telling them what they need to drink. They're less active. They don't need to stay as cool anymore because it's not hot. Leave your goat's water alone. Make sure it's clean and accessible. And that's all you need to do for their water.
For sure.
But anyways, I borrow from my bucks water down there, like a small bucket, and take it over. But then I have to either thaw out a hose or bucket a lot of water back down there because everything freezes. I really wanted to. Does anybody know like a good way? Because I have like a lot of like the black like tubs, garden tubs that I was thinking about like putting my hose in, but then putting almost like a plastic, like a greenhouse plastic over the top of it and putting it like southward facing to where the sun would like heat it up. So I would have heated hoses year long and they wouldn't freeze. What do you guys think of that idea? Is that like, shut up. It doesn't like it, but I'm trying to think like, instead of like rolling it up and bringing it in and making a mess, if there's an easier way to do it. And that was like where my mind went. Dee says, okay, I'm running too. Everyone have a good night. Bye, Dee.
Yeah, good night. Yeah, Emma said up there, trick is to keep water from freezing without electricity. Yeah, if there was an easy way to do it, that'd be wonderful. But
maybe you can try like test drive that salt water in like a jug on top of your water. And then sometimes, like, I know, and I've been really bad for this sometimes, especially like in the winter, like if I let the chickens out, they want to go to my troughs, and I have to make sure that my trough water is raised up. But I found that if I put in like cinder blocks, that if my chickens go in, then they can get out of it. But that might also make it to where you have a larger water source that has like cinder blocks where they can like literally jump on the cinder block in the middle and get closer to the water as it goes down. And it gives you more area for water in that jug to move around the cinder blocks. Just, I don't know, I'm spitballing because the whole not having electricity like really sucks. Unless you can find like a solar panel that like feeds down into a heater. They might have that nowadays though.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see like there might be something out there for that. So Sunny's Place says downward dog comes from the Sanskrit words adhas meaning down, mukha meaning face, svana meaning dog, and asana means posture or seat. Okay.
You're tired. You called her Sunny's Place.
I know. I'm sorry, Emma. You can tell I'm tired. Mark's face when you said that. I know. He doesn't hide facial expressions
when she says things. I instantly
he basically tells me I'm stupid all day
she
just without saying
if I'm
a
talking
word.
to somebody in a conversation and she's like reading my face, she'll like know exactly what I'm thinking.
Like if they're BSing him on gun stuff, like pew-pews, and like he can tell they have no idea what they're talking about.
I just
He's
don't
like
care to argue with people,
like,
so I'll just
on his face. I'm just like, dude. He thinks you're so stupid. He thinks you're so dumb.
I think I am too. So
his dad is notorious for that too. Like his dad doesn't hide emotion on his face when you're talking, which is great. It makes him extremely easy to read and know how he's taking what you're saying. But at the same time, I'm like,
they're probably doing the same thing when you're talking. They're probably looking at me like,
so he tells me I'm stupid about 1,000 times a day without saying a word.
Fairy said maybe a small cold frame. I picked up some used windows for $3 at the restore.
Yeah, like a small cold frame. Like, exactly. Exactly. I need to look into this restore
we've been wanting to do, and I don't know when we'll get around to it, is put a hot water faucet in the garage. That way it's protected a bit, but then I should have access to hot water because goats actually do love that.
They love the warm water.
Oh yeah, that when we bring that out and they see that steam coming off of it or the mist almost, they'll come run it over to it.
And actually, before I had the heaters in my water tanks, because like everybody starts at a point where they're like, I just cannot afford that. Like I can't afford to have all the stuff that you need for livestock. And that was my go-to, especially when I had boar goats that were kidding in the winter and I didn't have a heated bucket for every stall. I would fill up like milk jugs full of like hot water, and I would go to each one and I would put hot water into it because it would crack the ice. The does love the warmer water, and it rose the temperature where they had access to that water longer throughout the day. I know you can't do that while you're away, Emma, but like that, I know that sucks. I need to play poker with that guy. You make some money.
Poker for a reason.
You make some money.
The only good thing is like people that don't know me have no clue though. I don't think like it's when you get to know me, then you can read my facial expressions pretty good.
I don't know how you would not be able to tell when like you're like it's someone who's talking.
People keep talking, so apparently they don't mind it.
They're like, this guy just has
he's
a weird mug.
I guess.
This guy's got a very like hateful mug all the time.
Terrible to talk to.
No, maybe that's why people think you're arrogant though, because you're saying like people think that about you sometimes.
So another piece that we talked about, or Ashley mentioned for the winter in the barn, is heat lamps. So as you mentioned, we had a scare with them. So she's found some just different things to help.
Well, like the premier one where they are completely encased. Like there's no way that the animal or the bulb can come in contact, or that the bulb and bedding materials can come in contact.
Definitely recommend those because, like she said, we had a scare. The heat lamp fell off and came in contact with the bedding, and
I don't know how we didn't lose our entire barn.
Like the wall was black. There was a lot of smoke
everywhere. Like the moment
we were actually getting ready to leave for work. That was when
I was doing a check right before I was about to leave.
Happened to go there.
And I just started a new job, so like you can imagine when I told my supervisor I almost had a barn fire this morning. Like I've got to come in a little bit late. I'll work later, whatever. But Joe had been out. We'd actually had a bunch of young boar goats, and she's like, they look cold. and she'd taken the heat lamp, which was on clamps,
good intentions,
and had moved them, but didn't make sure that the clamps, because it was like a stiff clamp, because I mean, and honestly, like, mommy should have had them tied up. A lot of times now after that, I will put like chains or a catch string so that, like, if it does come unhinged, it can't fall. Like, it's tied off to something, it cannot fall. But I walked in there and it had fallen down on some hay, and it had fallen up against like a metal corrugated roof piece that I was using to kind of insulate that heat in towards those little goats. And it was, the entire thing was black. There was smoke everywhere. That hay was dry as a bone. I do not know how we didn't have a fire. But luckily, like, I had enough water buckets in stalls. I just started dumping it. Just grabbed all the water buckets, opened up all the barn doors, pushed all the animals out, and just started dumping buckets. And
the barn was full.
Fine.
It just wasn't come out the door yet.
Yeah. When I walked in, like, it was just haze. Like, you almost couldn't see in front of you.
It probably
and the goats were freaking out.
Has a pretty tall peak, so it went up to that.
Well, they figured the night before had been really cold, and when it's really cold, like, I will close them in to help to keep like circulation and keep the warm heat in. And like, I basically almost like killed them with smoke inhalation. It was crazy.
Goats that smelled like smoke for a couple of days.
Yeah, my eyes burned for days. Because of going into the smoke for it. It was just
Stephanie
crazy.
said that she loves the Premier One.
Aren't they nice?
I will be honest, Premier One makes some good stuff.
They do.
We like their temporary or movable fencing. We use that for our ducks.
Yeah.
And we plan to even maybe look at buying another set of fencing for temporary pens for goats and ducks. Because it's come in handy multiple times.
Yeah, because even though like the duck pen that we're making is pretty big, we're still going to utilize rotational grazing. So we do have specific gates that are being designed into the fence itself, so that we can
Joel South
follow on Joel South device, so that we can push them out into greener pastures, so that they give like their regular pasture a break every now and then.
Emma said, I won't do traditional heat lamps anymore. I love the Prima heat
I've heard Prima heat lamps are really good.
And Fairview said the sweeter heaters are nice. We'll have to look into
I've never heard of the sweeter heaters. I know a lot of people now are doing like the plates, like the heating plates that you can like install up on the walls and stuff. I don't know how I feel about those, but I know like we use the heating plate now for like chick brooders.
Yeah.
Where they can go under it like a mama hen.
Man, they pile up under that thing.
They do pile up under that thing. Then it's been safe. I mean, it's pretty safe. It doesn't get super hot. And then when they get
tall enough or old enough, they'll jump on top and use it to heat their feet.
Yeah, that's so much fun, because then I got to
clean it up.
Then I've got toasted poop on the top of it. It's never fun. It's like coated in toasted poop. It's awful.
Yeah, Emma said to Fairview, infrared heaters are nice. I just have a hard time spending the money on one large enough for 30 plus.
I know.
They're still.
Did you see though, Emma? They have like the raised. Oh goodness, what is it? Roosting bars that are heated, so that your chickens can have a roosted or a heated roost. Warm. Even though I'm like, guys,
my mom shared that.
Your mom did share that, but I mean, I'm just one of those weirdos with chickens. And I guess like the only reason that there's ever a heat lamp in our barn is if I have a goat that is struggling to keep body temperature up, which are other things we can do outside of heat lamps.
Pretty constant when we did the 4-H meat brothers, because we had to have them born.
We were dropping kids
January
like
1st.
In the dead of winter. It was always so cold.
Always on the coldest night.
So that's when they'd make me stay out in the barn all night long. Is when it was like Arctic vortex weather. I'm like, thanks, just push it out.
Yeah.
But other than that, we really try not to use a heating source, because like with proper diet and conditioning, your animals should be just fine. And little chickens are like little furnaces. They've got that down in those feathers, and then they get up on the roost and they tuck their feet up and in, and to keep their little toesies warm. So for a lot of them, I just don't see there being a lot of need.
The only thing we'll do once in a while, as you've done before, is the roosters putting Vaseline on their combs to keep them.
Vaselining combs and
but
wattles.
Even then, we sort of let that go, because we don't have sugar.
And you can't always keep that from happening. You can't always prevent frostbite.
Especially some with the bigger homes.
Yeah. I mean, that's also like what we were talking about with the cold. That's the body pulling the blood flow in to keep the core warm, to sustain the body, and sacrificing like a piece of the comb, because that is why it got too cold. The blood flow was pulled away from it to keep the core warm.
Fairview said, Preston Seal is your friend. Cover your brooder with it and peel it off. That's a good point.
I didn't even think about that. You guys are so smart.
I mean, Preston Seal does make a nice insulating seal. So
100%.
I like that idea, Fairview.
Yeah, and so Emma says I don't use heat for full-grown chickens. Only 100%. That's and honestly for me, I'm like that's the only time that they need it. Especially after, and your sister actually had like a small chicken coop fire, and it was in winter, and there was a heat lamp in the chicken coop, and it fell, and like and it was just a little doghouse, but it was like up in flames, and just like that, like it went. They were asleep inside. They had no idea what was happening.
Somebody drove by and woke them up.
Yeah, I was like, hey, your coop's on fire. So and we've actually seen there was a dairy last year that lost it. Was it Castle Rock? Was it? There's actually been a couple really well known like goat dairies that have lost everything to like heater malfunctions. And it just scares me to death, especially when you start to build up your infrastructure.
In barns in general, well, just the frame, the hay.
Well, I mean, you think about that too. Like in the winter, you're promoting like a dry, draft-free area, which is perfect for a fire to start in. You know, like nice fresh bedding, and there's no moisture in there because moisture is not your friend when you're housing animals. So
be careful.
So Emma says that's right. I meant to ask you if you had suggestions for comb wattle on a rooster. This guy is bigger than Teddy. Yeah, just Vaseline.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, just Vaseline.
They make other products now, but Vaseline's what
that was the go-to back in the day for us was Vaseline, and it seemed like it worked really, really well. But it is one of those things like apply it every night. If you know it's going to get super cold, and there's a possibility apply every night.
Yeah, just to give them that skin protection.
Unless you have someone that like knits super awesome like chicken helmets that can like go over and like make him wear a little hat. I would pay to see that, Emma. You need to create it so that you can sell it because I'm sure people would buy it.
Yeah.
So Fairview Family Farm says we use flat, wide roofs so the birds can sleep flat-footed. That can cover their feet to prevent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's hilarious when people are like showing their roofs and it's like a metal roost. I'm like, would you want your toes on a metal roost? Like it's gonna suck the heat out of them. People, you got to use some common sense. Like at least use something super organic. Yeah.
Insulation too.
Yeah, nice and wide.
One thing, like I've got a thermal scope, so at night we can see predators a little bit easier. But if you go through and like scan the woods, you can see the trees have a little bit better heat signature than like
they do
a lot of things in the yard.
Or like the metal gates compared to like the wood fencing next to it.
There's a big is the mineral block. I don't get that.
The mineral block is always hot.
Yeah.
Like always very hot. And I don't know if it's because like it's mineral and sedimentary. So like in the sun, it absorbs heat and it holds heat. But it's always super hot. We're always like, well, there's the mineral block.
What's that? Oh, that's the mineral block. I don't know why it does that. But.
I would totally do a hat for him. Right. He's debuting next year. Yes, Emma, yes. Awesome. We need to see this. Evelyn says, I have to run. Hope everyone has a good night. We're getting ready to sign off too because 10 o'clock is absolutely my bedtime, especially right after daylight savings.
To do that before.
Oh, you're going to have so much
fun. I spent my time shaving my head before the...
He did and spent a long time in the shower trying to make... Yeah, he got all groomed for you guys.
Have to.
Whatever. He's got to put his best foot forward every time he's on camera. He's a little
diva. Going out there,
he's a little diva. It's okay. But anyways, guys, we're going to catch you next Wednesday. We will be live normal time at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And come with all of your turkey plans. Yeah. We want to know everything about your Thanksgiving.
Talk about your meals so we can all get excited for
Emma, if you could just rein it in and not make us all feel terrible on our culinary skills, that'd be great. But yeah, we are going to go ahead and hang it up tonight, guys.
Is it past your bedtime?
It is past my bedtime. Doesn't he look handsome?
Yeah. The shaved head. Shiny. Looks good.
I know. Keep going on and on about how beautiful you are. But in the meantime, guys.
Belinda and Chuck just joined.
Oh, no.
Well, glad you made it. Next week will be normal time.
Normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight was a weird one. So
we got pushed back.
But thanks, guys, for dropping in and spending time with us. We hope that you're all going to be safe out there and being kind to one another.
Yep.
God bless.
God bless.
We will catch you all in the next one.